Hi, welcome to Glo's Kinder Kitchen, and I'm Glo. Well, today I thought we would make meatballs together. There's so many ways to make meatballs, but this way I'm going to show you now is easy, and it's something that you don't have to do in the oven, stovetop, and on a warm day like today, this is perfect. And we're going to serve this with mashed potatoes. So anyway, let's go ahead and get started. What I do first is I saute my vegetables I'm going to put in my meatloaf. And I went ahead and I cut up 2 of those real small sweet peppers that you can get, and I have a yellow one and a red one here. I took 2 ribs of celery and I cut that up real fine. I took a half of an onion and cut that up rather fine. And then I have cabbage here, just green cabbage. I just cut off a wedge of it and cut it up small pieces like this. And then I have 1 clove of garlic here that I smashed. So what I'm going to do is first is I'm going to add some, my pan's starting to heat here. And I'm going to add about a tablespoon of olive oil. And that's the sauteing olive oil, so it's not the extra virgin. And I'm going to do about a teaspoon of bacon fat. And that gives a really nice flavor to the meatballs. And I always save my bacon fat after I cook bacon. And I use it quite often, soups and everything, and I keep it in just a small jelly jar. I'm going to go ahead and move that out of the way. Move this out of the way. So I can go ahead and start putting these veggies in here. I'm going to turn this up to about a 4 on my stove here. And put the peppers in, the onions, the celery. And by doing this all up ahead of time, it's going to save you when you're preparing everything. And of course the cabbage. This cabbage is going to give your meatballs and the sauce that we're going to make to go with it a really nice sweet flavor. You wouldn't think that cabbage would do that, but it really does. So actually I'm going to turn that up to medium, which is 5 on my stove. I'm going to go ahead and stir this around a little. So while that's starting to heat up and to saute, we're going to go ahead and get started on the rest of our meatballs here. So I'm going to just move this out of the way. Now, one of the tricks that I do is I learned this, I believe it was from American Test Kitchen, or it could have been Country Cooks, but they recommended adding Knox gelatin, just the plain gelatin, to your meatloaf. So I tried that and it is excellent. And so I've been doing it with my meatballs as well. And what it does, it gives the flavor, actually more of the texture of veal. And veal is so expensive. And so since I've been doing this, this works so well and the texture is great. So I'm going to sprinkle, this is some milk here, about probably a half of or wait, no, more like an 1/8 of a cup. I'm just going to sprinkle probably about a teaspoon. Maybe just a tad more. That's about a teaspoon. And one of these little packets will last you quite a while. So this has to bloom for about 5 minutes. So that's why I went ahead and did that right now. I'm just going to set that right over there. And move this out of the way. So then the next thing we're going to do while this is starting to saute is I took a sleeve of saltine crackers. But I'm just going to use a half of a sleeve for this particular dish tonight because I'm just using 1 pound of hamburger. So if you were using 2 pounds, you use a whole sleeve. And all I do is I just break this up. Very easy to do. You can use panko, breadcrumbs. You could use Ritz crackers. You could use breadcrumbs, seasoned, whatever you want. In my meatloaf, I use Pepperidge Farm dressing mix along with Holland Rusk. But for this, I usually just do this. You could do this in your food processor too if you wanted to, but this is so easy to do it this way. There we go. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just put in my seasonings that I'm going to have going in here. So this here is Hungarian paprika. It has a sweet flavor to it. It adds great flavor to meatballs, actually almost any kind of meat. And I'll probably do, I would say that's probably about 1/4 of a teaspoon. And I'm going to put some thyme leaves in it. Actually, let's open up this side. You don't need a lot. That's probably about 1/4 of a teaspoon too. And I rub that in my hand to get that blooming. And this is marjoram. This is a member of the mint family, and it adds an excellent flavor to any kind of a dish like this, even in vegetables. It's really good. So I'm going to go ahead and probably do about, that's probably close to 1/2 of a teaspoon. And again, I'm just going to blend that in my hand to start it blooming. I've got some oregano here. Same thing. About 1/2 a teaspoon. And I put celery seed in my meatballs as well as my meatloaf. And it adds an excellent flavor. Anytime you're using like tomato and any of this kind of stuff, it goes very well. Actually, V8 juice. If you didn't have V8 juice and you wanted some, you could pour some tomato juice in a glass, put a little of the celery seed in, and you're going to think you're drinking V8 juice. And I usually do 1/2 of a teaspoon. It smells so good too. A little bit of onion powder. Four or 5 shakes of that. And I didn't put more than that because I've got onion in here, and you don't want to overpower your meatballs and your sauce with onion. You can smell the bacon grease in this. It smells really good.
It does smell good, Miss Clove.
Yeah. And I'm not going to add the garlic until towards the end because I don't want, if you cook your garlic to where it's browning, it will become bitter, and you don't want that.
No bitterness allowed.
So at this point, we're going to go ahead and stop while this begins to cook a little bit more, and I'll be back. Well, my veggies are all sauteed, and I'm going to put them in this bowl here just to cool. It smells so yummy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm going to turn that off for a moment while these cool a little. So our next step is our meatloaf, or not meatloaf, our meatballs. So what I have here is I've got some fresh parsley that I chopped up. There's probably about 5 leaves here, and I did include some of the stem. I'm going to put that in. Fresh parsley does add a lot more flavor than the dried. And when I buy the fresh parsley. I get it like this, and I'll bring it home and I'll put it in a jar and then just set it in my refrigerator. There's some water in here, filled about halfway, and then I put a bag over it, and it acts like a greenhouse, you know, just a fruit vegetable bag from the store. So I went ahead and I put the parsley in there. Now I'm going to go ahead and put in my beef. There's 1 pound there. And now I've got my milk with the Knox gelatin that's gone ahead and bloomed. And put that in. And I've got some Parmesan cheese here that I had on hand, so I'm going to add that. And I'm going to add in a little of the Yoshida's, which is a teriyaki sauce. Probably about a tablespoon. That gives it a wonderful, like umami flavor. It has a little bit of sweetness to it, a little bit of salt to it. It's just a delicious flavor. I'm going to add some Worcestershire sauce, and that adds the same type thing. That was probably about a teaspoon, teaspoon and a half. I'm going to add a little ketchup. And let's see, a little bit of just black pepper. That's probably about a half a teaspoon. And just a little bit of salt. And then I'm going to add about half of these vegetables that we just had sauteed up. The other half is going to go in the sauce. So I'm going to be back in a moment. I'm going to wash my hands so that I can mix this with my hands, and then we'll go on to the next step. Well, I got my hands all washed. I took my ring off, and I always put my ring in a little bowl so I don't lose my ring anywhere, because that would not be a good thing. So I'm going to set that right over there. And now we're going to go ahead and start mixing this up. I do have 1 egg here that I went ahead and I used the same bowl that I had the milk and the Knox gelatin in, so that I have less bowls to clean up afterwards. There. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to mix this together. Now, just like meatloaf, you don't want to over mix this. You want to get it just so it's all moistened and light. If you over mix meatloaf or meatballs, they, believe it or not, they become tough and not light. So that's the reason why you don't over mix. So now what I'm going to do is I add a little bit of red wine, dark red wine, not sweet. That's probably about 1/8 of a cup. That's probably going to be enough for this. And it just adds a nice flavor to it. And of course the alcohol will just cook right off from this. So there we go. That's all there is to it. So I'm going to wash my hands and I'll be back and we'll just go on to the next step. Well, I'm going to go ahead and add some more of this olive oil to the bottom of the pan. That's a very shy tablespoon. I'm going to add just a little bit of the bacon grease, not much. See, that's hardly anything.
Half a teaspoon or whatever.
Yeah. Just going to add some flavor. So the next step we're going to do, let me move this out of the way. So we're just going to make ourselves some little meatballs. And I find this works well for that. I'm just going to set them down in there. Now, if this was winter time, quite often I just cook my meatballs in the oven. You don't have the splattering and stuff, but being summertime, we don't use our oven as much.
No chance of snow tonight.
Nope, that's for sure. But a scoop like this just works really well. I use this for my cookies and stuff too. And that way too, your meatballs or your cookies or whatever you're doing are about the same size. And sometimes I will add like Italian sausage to this, or pork, you know, just plain pork, just whatever you have on hand. But for just the two of us, this is more than enough. So we're going to have 2 batches of this here. I still have some here I need to cook. So I'll be back in a little bit and I'll show you the next step. Well, I got my meatballs all cooked. There's 14 of them here. Most of them stayed together pretty well. That's the problem when you cook your meatballs on the stove. They tend to fall apart a little. And there's 14 of them, and it took about 5 minutes for each batch. I have 14 meatballs. So now I'm going to go ahead and add back the veggies that I had sauteed earlier. And to that, I'm going to add a couple of tablespoons of tomato paste. I find this is a really good way to buy tomato paste. You don't waste it. So there's probably about 2 tablespoons I'm going to start with for this dish. And when you open this, you just keep it in your refrigerator. And the reason I added it to this now is I want that tomato paste to brown just a little bit in this pan and help get some of these drippings up. Right now I have my pan on low. When I cooked the meatballs though, I had my pan on a 4. So that's just below medium. If you cook like that, you're not going to end up with such a mess from splattering and stuff. Okay, so while that's finishing browning, I'm going to do the next thing here. I have a jar of, these are home canned tomatoes from last summer. And I only have, I think, 2 or 3 jars left. This next month I should be canning more tomatoes. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and add that. And by putting my spatula like this, it's not going to splatter as much.
That's good because I'm only a foot away from it.
Yeah, try to be careful so nobody gets burnt or anything from splatters. And also just the mess. So we're going to go ahead and let this simmer for a bit and then I'll taste it. Sometimes I have to add a little sugar to it or a little salt, but we'll see what it tastes like here in a little bit. So I'll be back probably in about 5 minutes. Well, our sauce has been busy cooking here. It's been about 10 minutes. I could have left it at 5, but I was peeling potatoes to go along with this because I'm going to be making mashed potatoes to serve with this dish. So I'm going to add another about 1.5 tablespoons of this tomato paste. At this point, I tasted it. It's delicious, but I just want to add a little bit of water to this and the last part of that wine that I had. And so because of that, the tomato paste will help thicken this a little. And then I'm going to add the wine.
Superb.
So total between the meatballs and the sauce, there's about 1/4 cup of the dry red wine.
Excellent.
Oh, that smells really good.
It does.
The vegetables just got to cook a little bit more and break down. So And then I'm going to add a little bit of water, and I just used my jar from my tomatoes. There we go. And I've had this cooking on 3, which is like medium low at this point. So now what I'm going to do, I was going to put in a little bit of sugar, but not much. That's probably about a teaspoon total. And I use brown sugar. You could use white sugar, you know, whatever you have on hand. I'm just going to sample that right now to see if it tastes okay. Oh, that's delicious. I wish you guys could sample it with me. That's really good. The last thing I'm going to put in this sauce is nutmeg. Nutmeg pairs very well with tomato dishes. Not a lot, as you could tell, it was just a few sprinkles. Nutmeg is one of those spices, if I had to not have a spice in my kitchen, that would not be one of them. I would always have that on hand if I had a choice. So now I'm just going to nestle these down in here to finish cooking. And you guys might have noticed I'm not using a cast iron pan. Tomatoes and cast iron don't go well together. So that's why I didn't use a cast iron skillet. But unfortunately, I don't have a lid that fits on this particular pan. So I'll show you a little trick that I do when I don't have a lid. There. I'm going to leave these other 2 out. They're kind of falling apart a little anyway. And we'll just add them towards the end because this pan's pretty full. Isn't that beautiful?
Looks good, Miss Glow.
Yep. So now I'm going to turn this down to low. And since I don't have a lid, what I do is I take a cookie sheet or anything else that I can lay on top. I just put it on top.
There you go.
Works perfect as a lid. And so anyway, it's just important to use what you got on hand and make do. And I'll be back with you probably in about 20 minutes. Well, our meatballs are ready now to eat. I wanted to just show you. Look at how delicious that looks. And I made the potatoes. The potatoes are a combination of Yukon Gold with Idaho. That's what I had on hand that I needed to use up. I do need to share with you that I needed a little bit more spice to my sauce, so I did a few sprinkles of the red pepper flakes on it, and it is so good, just delicious. Another thing I wanted to share with you, when I make mashed potatoes or boiled potatoes, I always save my potato water. The reason why is I like to use it in soups and gravies and stuff, so I'm going to hang on to this. Anyway, now we're going to taste. It smells so good, you guys. I wish you were here to enjoy this with us.
It does smell good, Miss Glow.
Now for the meatball. I gotta tell you, this is just delicious. I'll show you this meatball if I can. It is so light. That Knox gelatin really does the trick. It's not, you know, tough at all. It's just delicious. And that nutmeg just brings it all together. I don't know what it is about nutmeg, but it does. So anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this. And if you have and you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe to our channel. And give me a like, a thumbs up. or comment. I hope you have a wonderful evening. We'll talk to you later. Bye.